Okay, I'm going to get started. My name is Don Bowman. My company is Agilicus, and we make zero trust remote access easy and simple for manufacturing for critical infrastructure. And that's what we're talking about today is a VPN alternative. There's been a lot of focus on the VPN, the traditional standard bearer of getting somewhere from somewhere else. A virtual private network. At the beginning of this year, there was a set of critical vulnerabilities exposed in a set of VPNs by CISA and others. And that's caused some insurance providers to question it, particularly when you're talking about contractor or vendor access. Is the VPN a way to get access to everything? Is everything the right thing? Is there shared accounts on it, etc.? And that's what we're going to talk about today is what makes a VPN good, bad, or ugly, and some notable risks, and what an alternative is. What's something that's easier for those folks to use, easier to manage, lower cost, stronger authentication, and some of the benefits that come with a zero trust remote access system for a manufacturing type environment. And I say manufacturing, I mean, there's a broad set of things that might mean. We're going to talk about industrial control systems, SCADA, and so on. But we're also going to be talking about support systems like SAP, and things of that nature, remote desktop. So it's kind of a broad spectrum. So I thought I would put a poll in here. How do I start the poll? Maybe I'm not going to today. This was meant to be a conversation starter. So CISA dropped these 3 emergency directives at the very beginning of this year. And it basically said you have half an hour to get this bomb out of your network. And what are you going to do? And everybody had one of those: Palo Alto, Fortinet, Cisco, Avanti. And some people, they just sort of went on with business as usual. Vulnerabilities will happen, vendors will fix them. Probably I'm not the biggest target out there. Could be true. Some people started pulling the network cords out immediately. Some told their staff to be in the office instead. Some denied that the thing had ever existed. Hey, there's no backdoors here. We don't use E1 with a site or modem, etc. The main thing that I wanted people to do was to sign up to this webinar. So when you talk about needs, one of the main issues that we address is industrial control systems have a long lifespan. You're not talking about a laptop that you ship to somebody and they use for 2 years and you replace. You're not talking about an operating system, like a desktop operating system is getting patches every couple of weeks. You're talking about something that's going to go into service and sit there and run and do its thing for a decade plus. And they have a lot of variation. It's not just everything is HTTP and a browser. They got a lot of variation, much more than the IT infrastructure that sits around it. And you think about a lot of the support systems that are there. It could be HVAC, building management system, locks, doors, facilities. It could be the human machine interfaces or the PLCs or the ERP systems. There's a lot of variation there, and they have a lot of long life, and you don't patch them because you don't want them, you view that as downtime and it's a bad thing. But there's also more constituents. In a manufacturing type environment, you've got an integrator that helped to build the system. You've got a manufacturer, an upstream manufacturer that built the individual parts that you use. You've got a set of contractors. They might be contract vendors, contract manufacturing. They could be people that do IT work for you or OT work on an ongoing basis. It could be a joint venture where you and some other company, have a shared ownership structure. It could be your own staff. It could be your regulatory. Maybe somebody is getting real-time pollution metrics out of the system for regulatory use. Each of them has a different scope, risk, and controls. And when your only tool is the VPN, it's not really a cure-all because its scope is everything and its risk is everything and its controls are minimal. It's either on or off. So, what is a VPN? Well, the VPN sort of came out in the 90s with the idea that as we moved from dial-up to internet to companies would have broadband, and maybe you would at home as well. And we came out with L2TP and PPTP and those types of VPNs, and it kind of got the job done. The company would put a VPN server on their network, and you would connect to it with your username and password. There was no second factor. Let's face facts here. And there wasn't the concept of ransomware yet. They were more worried about maybe information leakage, but nothing else. And those users were usually mobile. they were road warriors and you working from a hotel, and they would be complaining IPsec doesn't work from this hotel because of network address translation and so on, or DNS split horizon was a huge hassle. The VPN is a pretty good solution for people that need access to everything. Like if that's your job, your IT staff, it's a terrible solution for a task-based worker. I support the SAP system, I need access to the database only. Well, why do you give that person access to everything? It's terrible for a partner. I work with partner X. Well, they've got 100,000 employees and they're always rotating. I'll just create a shared account for them. It's a terrible solution there because they just create a virtual machine, bring it up. They don't like it either. They don't like having, hey, I support these different manufacturers and each one has their own VPN and I can't install 2 VPNs on my laptop, so I create virtual machines or whatever. But it really evolved from that dial-up concept where you connected to a network and you were effectively on the network, and predates SaaS and cloud and all those other things. And it was also originally conceived around that singular company idea. All my users work for me, they're doing an alike thing. There was no concept of, this company manages my building management or my HVAC system for me. So the good part about a VPN, it just works, right? So, you've got an IP on that network and it doesn't matter how weird this protocol is, if it's multicast this or backnet that, it's gonna work, Profinet or something like that. It's like being there. There's no additional steps once it's up, and if you view the world as security is not that important, but convenience is, this is a pretty good thing. If the user brought the VPN up a couple weeks ago and they haven't had to touch it since, hey, that's a good thing. And some people view that transport level encryption as a good thing. They're not too certain on the protocols that they're using, and maybe they're using IMAP or POP3 for email or something like that. And this provides a level of encryption. And a lot of people put a lot of trust in those VPN vendor names. They got big shiny nameplates on their door and they're well known, etc. And no one ever got fired for deploying a VPN. This is the glass half full standpoint. I'm not a glass half full kind of guy today. So what's the bad part? Well, the bad part is this company that supports me, they're very reluctant to install my VPN. I use VPN XYZ with these certificates and they have these people that support me, and it's a real hassle. So they actually end up billing it back to me or refusing, or I get lower levels of support because they can't get to me as easily as other people. Another one that you don't hear of as often is my video call breaks when VPN is up. And what's actually happening is you're using a full tunnel VPN, becomes the default route. So all the traffic from your home goes to your company and then back out again. The upstream of your company is the downstream of all of your users and vice versa. So you do that big company meeting and the world breaks. You can't have 100 people on a Google Meet or a Zoom call because there just isn't enough bandwidth in the company for it. And a lot of people don't really understand that, and I've got some YouTube videos on the topic, but it's a hard problem to solve. You can switch to having split horizon VPNs, which have these IPs go here and these go here, but your security goes down a lot, but also your reliability, because now you have the problem of split horizon DNS, and maybe I'm resolving off the wrong DNS server, and dockage leakage protection can happen. I'm worried about losing something. I want to print to my local printer, but I want the VPN up. Anyway, this question here is a big part of the problem. And also with respect to your vendors, they may overlap with your IPs. We all use private IP space because of IPv4 limitations. RFC 1918, you've got 10/8 or 192/ something. And what if their corporate network and yours share a subnet? Well, a full horizon or full VPN tunnel will fix that, but the split horizon one, you can't really do that. And then it becomes a problem of who's going to calibrate their IPs for who. Well, I support 3 different customers. I can't, they've got overlapping requirements. A lot of people also have device issues. Hey, I want to support my customers in the best possible way, and I travel with a tablet only. I'm in a truck. I'm on an LTE modem, and I can't use your VPN client. And sometimes there's licensing issues. I can't install my customer's VPN software, or let's just share this account. You hear this one a lot. We've created a VPN account. Everybody's happy. Suddenly there's a corporate directive, multi-factor for everyone. They're like, uh-oh, how do I do that? Does every person have the YubiKey? Oh, we hang it on a hook on the wall, and is the person on call, put it in their pocket? And you start to hear these kind of workarounds. Let's just use SMS for multi-factor. And I get this SMS reflector. It'll go to everybody's phone in real time. This is a terrible, terrible idea. You're taking multi-factor and you're destroying it for no benefit. Like you're reducing your security and increasing your hassle factor. So that's what I'm here to talk about today. Increasing security and decreasing hassle factor instead of the other way. The ugly part about the VPN is once your network and their network are connected, their risk becomes your risk. Their ransomware becomes your ransomware. That USB key they found in the parking lot that they clicked on, that phishing link, it's in your network because their network is your network. Those emergency directives, a lot of you will have read them and some of you won't have read them. And they basically say, in a bunch of weasel words, these VPNs are poor, or these VPNs don't do what you think they do. One of them was really worrying for me. It was one of those next generation firewalls, and it does SSL inspection in the outbound direction. So the idea is, you install the trusted, root certificate on everybody's laptop using some sort of Windows group policy, and then when they access the internet, this thing proxies it through it, it transparently unencrypts it, and checks for all sorts of malware and document leakage and so on. All of a sudden, an attacker has access to that private certificate signing root key that every machine in your office trusts. And now I can spoof your banking. This is terrible, terrible, terrible. And this is the problem with that all-in-one trusted thing that all the traffic flows through that has access to everything. There's no fine-grained authentication. There's no fine-grained authorization. It's all or nothing with maybe a few ACLs. And it doesn't, usually people don't roll it out with individual people users. They roll it out with shared account users. Fortunately, we don't need to panic. I'm hoping everybody has read this fantastic book. But let's talk about the desired state of the world, the VPN alternative where productivity goes up, security goes up, convenience goes up, and the corners of your mouth go up. So for task-based workers, what would they say? Look, I access only the resources I need. I don't want to know about the rest of your network. If I'm the guy managing your SAP, I don't really want to know about anything else. I don't want it on my risk profile. I don't want it on your risk profile. It's not mine. I want to do this from the location or network of my choice. Look, I'm not driving into your office. I'm not going to try to find a way for me to have a fixed IP that I come from. As a service provider, it's very difficult for me to do that. If you're telling me your VPN, you're going to lock it down by only allowing it to come from fixed IPs, I'm going to cheat you. I'm going to put a second VPN. I'm going to buy a machine in DigitalOcean or something, tell you that's my fixed IP, and I'm going to use it from all over the world. And you might just monkey see, monkey do, or hey, hear no evil, see no evil, but it's there. So you're not really achieving anything. I'm going to do this from wherever I want to do. I'm going to do it on the device of my choice. Look, you might have an opinion in your company about what people should use, but your contractors, your temps, your integrators, your auditor, your QuickBooks accountant, they aren't bought into that. And some of them you can force. You can say, look, I'm going to ship you one of my company laptops. What they're going to do is they're going to put in their closet. They're going to have 6, 7, 8, 10 of these laptops in the closet, one for each company they work with, and they're never going to get patched because they're always offline, and you're not really achieving anything there. And I want to do it with my single sign-on credentials. Look, I don't think that there's any reason, there's no security reason, there's no technical reason, there's no usability reason that you should have a second account for everything. Everybody that you work with works for a company. That company uses one of Okta, Azure, Office 365, Google Workplace, something like that. Those are all identity providers. Our system is pre-integrated to those, and that means every individual user uses single sign-on in the same way they do for their own email. So, Jane at contractor.co logs into her email Office 365 and logs into the HMI in your plant to check the calcium in some process in exactly the same fashion. This is so much stronger for phishing protection. It's much easier if your users don't have different usernames and passwords for systems, because you can train them. Look for the little lock icon, look for the URL, look for it to look like this, look for the theme. And that way, spear phishing, you've got to defeat it with people as much as you do systems. It also fixes that shared account issue. I've got the Siemens account. Siemens made the chillers in my plant. Well, what does that mean? Siemens has like 200,000 employees. No, there's a Siemens account. Has anybody left Siemens on bad terms since you gave that account out? I don't know, probably. So anyway, we paraphrase this as any user, any application, any device, any network. That's their nirvana. If you achieve that and you're secure, then everybody's happy. VPN alternative. So the world calls this zero trust. So the idea behind zero trust is you, on a pairwise basis, a person and a resource, you know who the person is, you know who the resource is, and you do authorization in the middle. So we call this the who, what, how problem. Who are you? I need to identify a person, a unique person individually, no shared accounts. That's that sign in with their Office 365 or their Google Workplace or what have you, so that I know who it is. So it's not the Siemens account, it's Jane. Is Jane allowed to do this? That's the authorization. What is Jane allowed to do? Jane is allowed to have read-only access to HMI2. Jane is allowed to do backup services on SAP. Jane is allowed to change the temperature in the plant on the building management system. And then the third part of that is how. How does Jane get there? So that's access. So identity, access, authorization, or sometimes authentication, authorization, and access. In the last case, the user is routed to only the thing they want. We use a proxy server-based model, so there's no IP transparency across it. Each end believes they're talking directly to the other IP, and they know the other guy's IP for auditing, but you can't ping anything on the subnet. In fact, you can't even connect to other things on the same machine. So if you have access to, again, SAP, the database is on port 1521, and you don't have access to some website on the same machine, that's actually what's going to happen. You'll be able to connect to the database, and if you try to connect to the web server, you can't resolve it. It doesn't go anywhere. There's nothing there. And it's still encrypted end-to-end. So if you have who, what, and how, you have zero trust. If that's done on a per-person resource pair basis, rather than a VPN, which is who and all. So me to star is VPN, zero trust is me to thing. And that authorization in the middle, that's what you own. So the identity provider is owned by the company of the person. The authorization is owned by the company who owns the resource being accessed. That's the trust but verify split in that model. So from a high level view, what does the user see? I'm going to do a little bit of a demo in a second. But as much as possible, everything is web-based. Now, there are things that don't work web-based, and some of them probably will be maybe outliving me. And we have a solution for those. They work with something called the launcher. But for the most part, we try to bring things into the web domain because everybody has a web browser. And web browsers, although they have a bit of a security issue, they're much better managed than everything else. They're patched on a fairly frequent basis, etc. And they have a lot of introspection on it. So the user sees, hey, I open this website and there's an icon for all my resources. I click on that and boom, I'm on that resource. I don't have to sign in again. All my sign-in experience is web-based. All my multi-factor is web-based. I don't have to worry about something else. And they see it as their existing company login, user, @partner. And so that's how you do vendor management. Usually saying, who's the partner I work with? Who are the people I'm working with? Click, boom, they're in. And now I have a full audit trail. Not only can I control what they're allowed to do, but I can see when they did it. And there's also a request flow. They can say, may I please have permission? And you can say, yes. Okay, you get a push on their phone, click. It's your authorization. So this is, who can do what? Do they need multi-factor? Do they need to be geo-IP in the same country or the same city or something like that? And this is very ideal for narrow task-based workers. If my only job is after hours checking this HMI when there's an alarm, that's all I want. Open web on phone, click on HMI, examine, clear alarm, done. If my task as an integrator is programming the PLC, my colleague Drew has pasted a white paper in here that we talked about, securely remote updating those systems that are in otherwise air-gapped environments. You own the Rockwell Studio on your end, and your customer has a PLC in their end, and you're able to program it across our interface, even though that Rockwell Studio is not a web page. PLC tag, a SCADA historian, facilities, building management, printers. Printers are really interesting. When you get these industrial label printers like a Zebra, and you get the manufacturing floor, which is kind of air-gapped, you get this printer, which is kind of on the IT network, and you want to be able to print across. You don't have to walk back and forth. There's no reason you shouldn't be able to use a system like ours to securely pierce that. There's no layer 3. There's no routes. There's no subnet overlaps. It's just thing-to-thing overlay network of those two things as a proxy. So this is sort of going through the sign-in experience on the right for two hypothetical users. One that is using an Azure type employment, which is in the top right, and one which is using a Google in the lower right. But in both cases, they're either presented with multi-factor in that identity provider domain or in ours. There's multi-factor for everybody. They're forced in, and you can see that at the end they just got to some, in this case, a very simple wiki. But that's the key, is making that sign-in experience simple and secure allows you to know who that person is. Once you know that, you've got that cryptographically available all the way through the flow. Whenever they try to do something, you're able to know, are they able to or not, and it authorizes it in the middle. The VPN cannot do this. The VPN cannot do that fine-grained authentication. It cannot do fine-grained authorization. It cannot do an audit on everything. It can audit in the sense of, VPN went up. But once the VPN's up, it didn't know you read file 3 from share 2 at time this. And what's the number one thing? If something goes wrong, what are they going to say? What did they get? Who did it? When? And you want to be able to answer that. That's why your audit trail's there. So I'm going to do a quick demo. The demo is live, but I've pre-recorded it just to make sure that I don't make mistakes, but I'll talk through it. I'm just going to switch to the other tab here. Sorry, folks. All right, sorry about that. So I'm just going to talk to a quick demo. This is only a minute or so long. So the user sees a simple, everything is mapped to an independent domain. They see a website, which gives them, it's going to give them icons for all their stuff. They sign in, that sign-in experience, they pick sign in with Microsoft, sign in with Google. Here we're doing multi-factor, we're using passkeys for the multi-factor, and the user provided it off screen, the phone chirped. And then they get an icon for everything. Here they can click and they're immediately signed into this HMI. They can also, you can see in the title bar, it's its own URL. So they can just navigate directly or have a shortcut for that if they prefer. Here we're going to demonstrate VT SCADA, popular SCADA system. This one's set up with a double login for the demo, but you can also have it single sign-on all the way through. And there the user has access to a complicated industrial HMI. And then let's talk about remote desktop. This is still the bread and butter. Sometimes it's using for debugging. You want to have multiple people share the keyboard. Here we did it entirely in the browser. You can also do this read-only, so people can see but not click or do anything. But you can see those eyeballs moving around. Also, I talked earlier about the launcher, the ability to launch a Windows 32 FAT client or what have you. Here we're going to demonstrate that also with VNC. We're going to launch it directly, and it's going to launch the native VNC viewer. This would also appear in your start menus if you're on Windows, as would your Rockwell Studio or everything. So there it is, non-browser based. It just brought it up automatically. That tunnel has no ability to do anything else. Like, it literally is just that one activity. So there's just, you can't get sideways. You can't, let me just type in an IP and override it. You can't do anything like that. That's what Zero Trust is all about, but it was also very easy for that person. So let's get off this slide. So why does this reduce risk? So the VPN alternative, we're not just changing for the sake of change, although sometimes that's fun. We're changing because we want to reduce risk, we want to reduce cost, we want to increase simplicity, we want to increase adoption, at least one of those, if not all of them. So first of all, shared accounts. Shared accounts are a risk. They're also a cost. You have to provision these. You have to deprovision them. You have to maybe change passwords and notify all those people when there's been a problem. But you really don't want to get involved in the HR churn of your partners. Jane suddenly had an addiction, Jane's addiction, and she got fired. Sad for Jane. I don't want to have to know about that instantaneously and deprovision her from my system because she was a trusted partner. I just want to keep moving on with my life. The HR team of her company is going to do that, so I have a bit of time. I'll still take her out of the authorization, but her ability to authenticate has been removed immediately. Overbroad access is gone. So the VPN, unless you've worked really hard at setting up these access control lists, it's very difficult for a VPN not to be kind of everything. Maybe it's everything on a subnet or everything on a VLAN, but it's really difficult to say, well, you've got port 443 is this website, and port 1521 is the database. Stay away from the database, please. We worry about people packet capture. What if they put malware on their PC and it scans the network and you didn't know that, or something of that nature? It's gone. The blast radius now becomes the authenticated user and the authorized service. That's it. So if somebody walks up and puts a gun to the head of that person and says, give me your laptop, and they hand it over, all they can do is the one thing they were signed to do, that HMI that I just showed you. There's nothing else that they can get. You have a full audit trail. Every single activity. And when I say, like, our system supports shares, you will know which file was read or written. For things that are HTTP, we'll know every single HTTP transaction, who did it from where and what IP, and was it a post or was it a GET, and what was the URI, and what was the payload, all of that stuff. VNC, who opened it when, to what machine. The HMI, who did what on it when. That audit trail, which you don't have with the VPN, is going to save your bacon someday when something bad happens. And it might not be a malicious bad thing, it's just hey, this bad thing's been occurring, we're trying to figure out where it's coming from. Oh, I see it's this one person logging in, they need some training or something of that nature. You can enforce multi-factor authentication. This is a challenge. Remember what I said earlier, those shared accounts, they're kind of famous for being difficult to do multi-factor on. You know, that hypothetical Siemens account. What are you going to do? Like, are you going to issue one YubiKey for all of Siemens? Are you going to, you're going to not allow passkey, the new modern hotness? Are you going to do SMS and know that they're reflecting it to everybody? What are you going to do there? Or are you going to have them call you? I'm trying to sign in, give me the code, TOTP. Are you going to sync the TOTP code generator timestamp across everybody's device? There's no good solution there. With our solution, every individual person is able to sign in as themselves, whether they work for you, or they work for your partner, they work for your manufacturer, they work for a contract manufacturer that you work with downstream, they work for somebody in your joint venture family. They always do that, and it's simple for them. Removing the VPN is a big step towards microsegmentation, removing access to things people don't need, least privileged access, and you don't have to worry about shared software and updating it on other people's machines and licenses, etc. It's a big risk set that's reduced. And it's a lot simpler to implement than people think. A lot of people think, oh, okay, we're going to do a zero trust project, we'll budget that for fiscal 2026, and we'll budget to do nothing else that year. I'm like, you're totally not right. This is something you can do incrementally. You can do a little bit at a time. Vendor A has 2 people and there's system B, and we'll just turn them on and we'll do some more. My team needs this, boom, 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 and you expand. The authentication is days, not weeks, hours, not days. And it's really simple. There's really no configuration needed. You don't have to do any integration to Microsoft Azure or Google Workplace. It's not like those SAML systems of the past where you needed somebody who would sit and look at those 2 XML files and calibrate them. And it's not like that. It's just click, it's enabled, it's done. OpenID Connect is a much simpler standard, and that's what we've implemented here. It's no different than signing into anything else. And that allows you to just type in that person's email address as a proxy for their identity, and then they claim it, they sign in. You get to choose whether they're forced to do multi-factor or they can use their own. You get to choose when they come in and where from the network. But that's that precise authorization. You make those choices. You can start with very, very small choices here and expand over time. But this is something most of our customers get going the same day, and they have teams using it in the same day for some need, and they expand it outwards from there to other systems. There's no configuration change needed on those resources. So going back to my SAP example, if you want somebody to access that SAP database, the SAP database doesn't even know. If you want somebody to access that HMI, they don't even know. Like, there's no config changes there. There's no config changes in the network. It just works by installing our connector on site. Everything else is SaaS. It's encrypted from the user's eyeballs all the way into your site. It's really simple. So my pithy call to arms, and this is a commercial pitch. We are a commercial company. My company is Agilicus, and we would love to help you out with problems you have in this area. I would love for you to reach out to my team. We're going to reach out to you after this, but I think my pitch is you have a set of underserved people, and that set is growing. 20 years ago, it was very rare for people to need to do something remotely from their home out of hours. Between then and 1 week into COVID-19, the world changed a lot, right? So all of a sudden, everything is done from wherever. Also, complexity of the systems. A manufacturing system, industrial control system that was deployed 20 years ago would have been deployed by a singular person with a singular skill set. And today you've got an HMI expert and an underlying process expert and an expert in each of the RTUs, an expert on the PLC. So it's a cast of thousands of teamwork to get it commissioned and deployed. But they can't all be on your site all the time. It's far too expensive. Your mean time to repair is getting worse. Those people want to be able to just get their job done remotely. Sometimes the manufacturers force it. You can't buy my device unless it has connectivity back to me for licensing or something. Sometimes it's just, that's the John Deere business model. Security is getting more important. Your insurance is not going to be renewed. There's SEC rules now that force you to disclose these breaches, to disclose your controls. Everybody's telling you that zero trust is the best solution. You're hearing it from NIST, you're hearing it from federal and state, you're hearing it here and there and everywhere. And they're not just making it up. It's easier and it's better. It's better for everybody. It's better for the end user, it's better for the administrator, it's better for the risk, etc. It makes that lateral traversal a very difficult thing to do. Understand that the VPN is not an appropriate solution for everything. It doesn't mean that there can't be a VPN for one person for one need. It's just not the right thing for everybody. It won't work with their software. It gives you that risk. Understand that everybody should have single sign-on. There should not be a single shared account in your universe. Not for you, not for your partners. Don't turn a blind eye to it. This is the biggest risk that's there, and you have it. Every one of you on this call, somewhere there is something that there's a post-it note that exists with that password, and everybody knows about it. So my call to arms, feel free to contact me afterwards. Drew's going to paste a white paper in here talking about a case study we did with a large manufacturing company that had multiple sites, and they were all individual divisions which had their own identity systems. They were separate corporations. They had joint venture manufacturing with external companies. They had contract manufacturing, but they shared a singular ERP system based on SAP, and each of them needed to be able to access that, but they were struggling with that, and they were using this VPN mesh. We solved that problem. So if Drew pastes that white paper in, you might have a quick read of it. Otherwise, feel free to call me, put an entry in my calendar. My team will reach out to you afterwards. That's all I had today. If there's any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. Otherwise, still a gaping hole. If you give a vendor access to a remote desktop with VNC, they use it as a jump box. Right. So there's no panacea. I'm a big fan of a concept called defense in depth. Defense in depth means you don't take the position of this thing is all of my security at once. You know, that's the medieval idea of a castle with a moat and and that was it, sort of a big wall. Instead, you think about, I'm going to have a set of layers. So the first thing you want is zero trust. No user can get to a thing unless they're allowed to do something on that thing. And the second is you got to have audit logging, so if things are going wrong, you can look at it. But the third is you have to do some onward segmentation in some cases. So yes, we can help you with that. So in some cases, with remote desktop, for example, you can give remote desktop to a singular application. So rather than they have access to the PC, they can have access to the one app. That's an example where you can use. With VNC, you can do read-only. So if all they need to do is to view the screen, you can do that as well. If you want to then have that device firewalled outwards, so we can help you with that in the outbound direction. So sometimes people have stuff that lives within an air gap, and they kind of want a little bit out, like the license manager. But yeah, if you have a PC that has access to everything on the network, and you get the remote desktop to it and their administrators, you've reduced your risk because at least you don't have other networks able to do that, but you maybe not have reduced your risk enough. So if you'd like to discuss that in more detail, Steve, be willing to do that for sure. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. We'll follow up with a recording of this afterwards in case one of your colleagues wants to see it. We've got more content similar to this on our website. I see one more person typing there. I will hold on the... Okay, I think we're shut down. So thank you very much for your time. Again, my name is Don Bowman. My company is Agilicus. You can check us out at agilicus.com. The white paper... Oh, talk a little bit of architecture of the software. Sure. So I don't mind going into more detail, Steve. So, so our system, the primary way we operate, there's a small piece of software that runs on your site called the connector. It makes an outbound only connection to our cloud. So you could make your firewall be deny everything inbound, and the outbound connection is on a fixed IP and a fixed, it's called an SNI, but a SSL certificate. And it's capable of going through inspecting firewalls if you want. That outbound connection uses a protocol called WebSocket. Everything on top of that uses an authentication architecture called JSON Web Tokens, JWT. The user, who exists somewhere else in the universe, so think about this connector on your site, connected to our cloud, gone to sleep. The user exists in the world, they come in, they prove who they are, that JWT is spliced back onto it, and it comes back down to the connector on the site, and then the firewall runs in the connector on the site because it's end-to-end encrypted. So that's how the data flows from person to site. If you look in our product guide under the SSH remote desktop access, it's got a little animated diagram that shows that. We have exceptionally fine-grained firewall on things. So you can do in HTTP, for example, you can do the content type has to be JSON, and in the JSON body, this field has to be the user ID of the JWT that's on the other. You can do things of that nature, very, very fine-grained. We natively support a whole bunch of protocols. So all of the Win32 FAT clients with our launcher, the way it works is it interjects into their networking directly in the application. So it's kind of like a wrapper. The user starts that app, and that app is able to achieve its objective, but other things on that PC can't at the same time. That's the difference between a VPN. The PC is not connected, but the app is. For things in the browser, it's all brought into WebSocket, HTTPS, using that similar architecture. So VNC is there, SSH, a share, a web app, and things of that nature. For something like remote desktop, you have a choice. Generally with a remote desktop, people would use Microsoft's MSTSC native client, and it would run through our system. We would act as an RDP gateway in that regard. The connector can also do what's called the service forwarder, so site to site or site to outbound traffic. If you have your big data infrastructures at Amazon, we can allow you to get data there over like Kafka or something like that without having to poke holes in your firewall. So the state that we allow our customers to have is a firewall that allows nothing in, nothing at all. So it shows up, it doesn't even show up for ping. And the outbound direction, it allows a single tunnel, TCP, port 443, HTTPS, their choice of how they inspect it and so on to our cloud and so on. And one last question, if the outside vendor has special software that they need, how do you allow that app to connect? So in that case, in the demo I showed there, it was kind of at the top of it, there's something called desktop integration. So there's no privilege needed, but if they have some executable that isn't browser-based, they can click on that button and that helper will sort of install into their home directory or their user data directory, and it will wrap that app. So they'll see either in the profile, they'll see an icon for their special software and click it. The browser will then, through that helper, launch it, which uses what's called the native integration. That's what I showed in my demo. Or they'll go to their start menu and click it. Their app will come up. It will bring up our helper. The helper will intercept the networking of that one application and tunnel it to us over that HTTPS WebSocket proxy, or to us, to your site, I mean. There is no admin rights required for that shim. It's not a Windows service. It does work on Mac, Windows, and Linux. If you want some more follow-up on this, Steve, we can probably do a one-on-one on this, but I think I'm going to wrap it for now. Thank you, everyone.